if you're like me, there are many things that you would like to start or create, but you hesitate because you're worried it won't be as good as you would hope, or maybe you're comparing it to something else you've seen. And you're just worried about putting it out there because really you're putting yourself out there. You're worried it's not going to be as good the first time around. Well, that's okay because we're going to talk today about how even when your first try sucks, like absolutely sucks, it doesn't mean you can't be legendary in time. Welcome to the Pioneer Podcast, where we look at pioneers of past, future, present generations, and we hope that you would become one of those future pioneers, and even today in your own context. And you might wonder, why does this podcast exist? Well, for me, I had this idea to really help give people a sense of who they are meant to be in this life, opening their eyes to the difference that they can make by daring to be uniquely themselves, boldly doing what no one else is willing to do, helping them realize the pioneer that they are meant to be, and I want to say you are meant to be. Now, I realize I'm flawed. This podcast is just one of many, one of thousands. I can't fully give you a sense of who you're meant to be, but I hope that it does help. So thank you for joining me. It does mean a whole lot that you would spend the next 20 minutes or so with me. And I know you're listening to this. Maybe you stumbled upon it by accident. But I trust you're listening to this because you feel the same thing that I know, that there is something deep inside of you, that sense that there's something more that you are called to do, that you are created to do. And maybe you are the only one standing in your way, or standing in the way of a difference being made. Because I believe you are a pioneer. Now we are broadcasting across all platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Stitcher. So however you're listening to this, I welcome you and I thank you for being on this. And I just want to start out, what is a pioneer? Maybe maybe you've read the dictionary where it says, a person who is among the first to explore or settle into a new country. And I get that, but my definition would probably branch off of that and broaden a little bit more. I would say a pioneer is someone who's willing to go and do something that others are not. A pioneer is essence a leader. That's kind of where that hook comes in. A pioneer is a leader. They go first. Willing to lead the charge, take risks, and go where many are afraid to go in order to bring change for the good. I believe all of us have that in us. It's just a matter of what context, when, and how. Now, throughout this podcast, like I said, we'll highlight a few people, organizations, maybe even have a few conversations along the way about pioneers, past, present, future, and what that looks like and what that truly means in our world. Today, I want to do a little bit something fun for me because I think it can be a little bit unexpected, at least in a podcast like this. And that is talking about specifically the Bachelor franchise, the Bachelorette franchise. Yes, if you watch that, you know it very well. The background goes many years back. We'll get into that a little bit. But how it started, how this idea kind of started, was I was forced to watch The Bachelor. I did not want to. This was not a willing venture that I went into. I was watching it with my wife. It's one of her favorite shows. And I'll just, spoiler alert, it's one of my favorite shows I'm watching now. I'll be honest. It's just great. The drama's there. I just get into it. I can't deny it. But how it started, we were watching a particular part where it was venturing back into the very beginning stages of this series. And y'all, let me tell you, it was bad. I mean, maybe back in '02 when it first aired, The style was there, and they were on point, and they were on trend and everything. I'm looking back at it was bad. Pants were baggy, hair was bad. I don't want to say acting was bad, even though there might be some acting on that show, but that's not what this is about. Like the interactions, it was just all awkward. But I think because it was so new, nobody had ever done this before. And I think it speaks for itself, the fact that it is just it's a world renowned show now. Everybody knows about it. Everybody talks about it. People are having bachelor nights where they're pulling roses out, and it's a whole thing, y'all. If you haven't seen it, 18 years later, and I did a little research, okay, because I'm not just an expert on all of this stuff, and I tried to do a little digging for myself so that I didn't sound like a complete idiot when talking about this, right? So I did it in. As of now, according to Screen Rat, it was the seventh and actually the ninth longest running reality TV show. Why it's the seventh and ninth? Because there's The Bachelor, where there's a bachelor, and then there's their Bachelorette, where it's the Bachelorette. It's a female, okay? And that happened a little bit after each other. We'll get into that later, okay? That's a little nuance. But one of the longest running reality TV series, right? And not to mention, what it was doing at the time was groundbreaking. Nobody had ever done this form of live dating, or I guess ongoing dating, on reality TV. There was the old, dating game way back when, decades ago, where people would kind of sit on the other side of the wall and ask questions and then eventually go on a date, right? But nobody aired a TV show where not just a couple, but like multiple couples would go on dates, and you would see this progression not only of them as humans, which is always interesting to watch and very dramatic, but the relationship, right? Never before done. And so it kind of makes sense to me that it was, when we look back, is very cringy, right? And not just because of the bad breakups, but just because of everything that was going on, production and all of that. But they even had no idea what the Bachelor Bachelorette series was going to turn into. Now, I got this quote from The Cut NY Mag. It says, since it first aired in March 2002, ABC's reality dating show franchise has gone from novelty to phenomenon to joke to institution. Y'all, that is something to marvel at. Like what they've done, again, nobody's ever done this, and then having to work through a lot of scrutiny. I mean, here as pioneers, we know, like, when you're the first to do something, you're going to run into a lot of friction, a lot of scrutiny, a lot of shade, hate, whatever you want to call it. You're going to feel that resistance. I know for them, when they actually did the Bachelorette series, the first one, keep in mind, there had been two Bachelors before this, right? This is like 2002, 2003. The first Bachelorette got so much hate. Why? Because she was a female publicly going on dates, kissing multiple dudes. But nobody was irritated when the first two dudes were doing that. So that's a whole nother double standard. That's probably a whole nother episode we can get into. But she felt that as the first Bachelorette, right? Like, luckily she's happily married now, so it worked for her. But with the guy that she ended up with, right, on the show. But there was just so much pushback for her and so much hate, right? But honestly, that's what you're going to encounter. Anytime you start something new, something that is against the norms of the culture, you're going to get pushback. But that does not mean you should stop. That's the job of the pioneer. That's why whatever vision, whatever calling is put in you, you have to follow it. You have to push through no matter who goes against you, because you can't underestimate the amount of change you'll bring. Now, I know I'm kind of going on that little rant there, and that you're probably thinking, man, this is like a dating show. I don't know how much it's changing the world for the good. And I don't know if it's changing the world for the good, to be quite honest with you. It's definitely making my weekday evenings a little bit more interesting. I wouldn't say it's changing my life for the good, but it has changed the world. Couple examples here. 24 seasons of The Bachelor. 15 seasons of The Bachelorette, several spin-offs. This has sparked 22 international versions. Again, this is just through the research that I've done. And all of that has just come from this show, this idea that came from one guy. You could argue that it's from a group of people, a group of producers, but this one guy, I might be pronouncing his name wrong, but I trust he's not going to be looking at this podcast. Mike Fleiss, right? Mike Fleiss. He was the where this idea spawned, right? He was the creator of this. And funny that I found out he actually tried just to kind of make a point. Anytime you're going to try and do something, start something, your first try might suck, right? But you may actually run through a few tests that just up and failed. Now, Mike experienced that because he previously produced a show called Who Wants to Marry a Multimillionaire? Now, okay, anybody could probably raise your hand and be like, well, yeah, I'd probably want to do that too, right? But I probably wouldn't want to be on a show about it. Neither did many other people because that show failed, completely flopped. Odd fact, this really has nothing to do with being a pioneer, but it's just kind of a weird nuance that I thought the same creator of The Bachelor also helped create the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remixes. I don't know where the same creative juices flowed from that, but that's what happened. But here's what Mike says. Here's what Fly says. Back then, we didn't think we'd be doing 20 plus seasons. We thought we would do 2. Y'all, he started this mug and he thought he was only going to do 2 seasons. He'd come up with this idea, people would like it for a little bit, he'd get some cash, move on to the next thing. He had no clue what he was breaking into. And I truly think for any of you who are called to pioneer something, to start something, to take that first step, to go against the grain, you have no clue what you taking that first step might actually do, what it might become. So why did it work? Why did it work? This is, again, this is from Warner Horizon Television. This is a quote from Brooke Karen, the executive VP of that company. He said, why did it work? She said, you saw how truly hurt and devastated and angry Tristan, that first bachelorette, the one that met all that resistance. You saw how truly devastated and angry she was. She reacted the way we all would have. That's when you know it's going to work. That people will watch the show. Here's the thing. When they can relate to it. Why did it work? People could relate. That's how it took off. That's why it's still a global phenomena. Because that's honestly a little bit why I watch it. You know, if you want to get into my head a little bit, you can relate with the emotion going on. You might have even experienced some of that emotion. It's that relating is that ability, that catalyst for us not to just be successful, but to actually grasp people's imaginations, people's that vision, right? That drive that people have. That's how they connect with us. And it's oftentimes through the vulnerable moments. And that's another episode that I got coming on. But that's one way that we all connect. And I think that's how we as pioneers have to see not only like, what does this world need? What can I start? But why is it good for people? How can they relate to it? I think that is the key. And if maybe you're wondering, you feel like there's something you're just meant to do. Maybe you're on the brink of figuring that out, but can't quite get over that hurdle, or maybe not even sure how to take the first step. Ask the people around you. That's what I would say. Ask, hey, what is needed here? What can we do? What would you like to see change? What do you see in me? Maybe getting a little self-feedback or some feedback from them. Like what do you see in me? What am I good at? What do I normally do that nobody else does? Now, I got this quote from Chris Harrison, who's the host. Honestly, probably half the reason why I like the show is because of the host, Chris Harrison. Shout out to this guy. He'll never watch it either. But love that guy. He says, whether Mike Fleiss knew it at the start or not, the genius of the show was that it's so simple. The Bachelor is just about the one currency that transfers all around the world, and that's love. And that two people in this amazing, awkward, hopeful situation, they can find love. Like, again, building something that is so easily relatable, like The Bachelor did, something built around love. That was the key. That was the key with connecting the audience and building this entire empire. Now, for those pioneers listening, why does this matter? Why are we spending these 20 minutes talking about the Bachelor Series? I don't even like that show. Haven't watched a single episode. Why does it matter to me? Because there is something that you've started or trying to start, you're waiting to start. Maybe you're doubting yourself a bit. Maybe you've, reached this impasse where you're just not sure what to do. Maybe you're not confident in your abilities or what you can do. Look, this show is an example of something that can succeed. This show is an example of something that can succeed no matter how ridiculous the idea might be. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is, because that doesn't mean it won't succeed. Because reality is, as ridiculous as it may sound, it may be the one thing that people are looking for. Maybe it's that one thing that's going to help them get the next step. For me, I thought about this podcast and I thought, I don't know. There's a lot of podcasts out there. It's kind of the thing. Quarantine happened and everybody started a podcast. Why do I need to start one? Well, I thought maybe what I have to share through all these stories, through all these people, maybe it's going to help them start something that's going to impact a much larger group of people. Maybe it's going to help them become who they are truly made to be. No matter how ridiculous, how hard, what hurdles you run into, it may be the thing people are looking for. So, I don't want to leave you with just thoughts looming in the air. My personality type is an ENFP, which that P stands for perceiver, which really means, in my own words, everything just kind of gets jumbled. And I don't want to leave you like that because that's not fair to you. So here are a couple action steps. Like I mentioned earlier, talk to people around you. Ask those in your community, those closest to you, man, what do we need? What do we need as a family? What do we need in our household? What do we need in this community, in this church, in our business? What is needed? What's being held back? Or what's holding us back? And then what do you see in me? What do I bring to the table that really nobody else does? Or what are my things that are unique that I add value in? Maybe you're going to start a new business. Maybe you're going to help out or start a local nonprofit. Maybe you're going to take a step to start serving at your local church, something that you've never thought about. Maybe you're going to start a podcast, right? Maybe you go ahead and do that. Whatever it is, ask around. Put the feelers out there and you'll figure it out. And then the second thing, go out and fail. Go fail. Y'all, I will be completely vulnerable and honest with y'all. I hate failing. I am afraid of it. I think that's why this podcast has taken this long to get out. The only reason you didn't see this podcast 8 months ago is because I was afraid of failing. Go do it. Even though that first couple try, it might flop, it might suck, at least it's out there. And who knows the difference that you might make. And I know for sure that failure will make the necessary difference in you as a person, as a pioneer, as a leader. Even though failure is not the desired outcome, it is almost always the first necessary step. Even when your first try sucks, y'all, it doesn't mean it can't end up being legendary. Now, I want to leave it off with a quote from Simon Sinek. He says, "It doesn't matter when we start. It could be yesterday, it could be tomorrow, it could be 8 months from now. It doesn't matter when we start. It doesn't matter where we start. All that matters is that we start." I want to thank each and every one of you for joining here on the podcast, wherever you're listening from, YouTube, Instagram Live. Thank you so much. Please, if you like this, leave a review, listen, subscribe, share. Please, all of those things. I am greatly, greatly appreciative of anything that y'all do. Until next time.